Welcome to Money Station in Conversation, where we discuss the important, the interesting and the useful tailored to you. And today I'm joined by Ella and Lawrence. And this segment is our views on the news. So what news articles stuck out to people this month? For me, it was about the race report.
I don't think we can talk about anything else.
I'm going to be honest, I'm so tired. Even though I talk about it all the time, I'm starting to feel I'm getting tired of talking about race. But how can you not? Because it literally leads so many conversations in today's society. And so the government has released this report, and it was conducted by Tony Sewell. Mm-hmm. He's a black man. Mm-hmm. And although he said within his report, and it's very long, I've not even finished reading it, so it's very easy for us to have judgment, but it's important to read it. But so far, the report suggests that there isn't any institutional racism. However, it did highlight that there is racism within the UK. And for me, I'm just not surprised. When I say I'm not surprised, I believe that there is institutional racism. But of course, British institutions initially were founded on slavery, colonialism. Do we think that it's just going to be eradicated in 70 years? I think it's unrealistic. The way how I think now is from a logical point of view and a realistic point of view. And we cannot deny that although there is institutional racism, it has been getting better. And we're not going to be at a place where it just goes. Racism is never just going to go.
What do we mean when we say institutional racism? Because I'm kind of confused. Because, when people talk about the police being institutionally racist or the criminal justice system being institutionally racist, I think about things where there's a policy source, i.e. things that will obviously disadvantage people of colour, black people, right? And so that could be stop and search, for example. It could be a policy where you're going to target black people, right? But here's the thing.
That's something I would say.
I know. Here's the thing.
It's something I would say.
When we talk about the NHS being institutionally racist or the education system being institutionally racist, I've got more doubt because there's no actual policy that's racist behind it.
So I might end up changing what I just said. Maybe there is no institutional racism, but the application within the institutions is not equal when dealing with certain recipients.
Exactly.
So there's no policy within the police that actually says you should stop more black people.
Well,
is there?
No, but that's what I mean. When with the police and with the criminal justice system, I know that the source of what they were doing was to target. The idea behind it, when you talk about deportations and stuff, the idea behind sending people home is to ensure that people who are from a certain group are disadvantaged by the policy.
So
for
that, but for example, let's look at the judicial system, right? We don't have, unlike America, a written constitution. So judges and court proceedings, they can, I don't want to say manipulate the law, but apply it slightly differently to, say, a written constitution. So that's where it looks like there's institutional racism, because for the same crime, a white individual may not have a custodial sentence or a less sentence. Yeah. And then a black individual will get a custodial sentence for the same crime. So that makes me want to say it's institutional, but you're right. But the policy doesn't say, make sure you give the black person a longer sentence.
No, they're not going to do
it's the application of the law by possibly a biased or a prejudiced judge or racist judge. So is that the institution's fault or the judge's fault?
So yeah, that I think it's good for us to make a difference between the two, because there are certain policies. Say for example, you want to be tough on drugs, you already know which communities are going to suffer the most. It could be the Irish community, it could be the Caribbean community, whatever. You already know that approach to drug use is targeting those people. You can be subtle with it.
But is that only because that happens to be the black community, for example, now? Let's say 20 years from now, because let's take cocaine. A lot of the people that are distributing cocaine now are said to be the Albanians. Yeah, the Turkish and the Albanians. So if that policy still applies, it's going to now target them. So it's not about the policy to target a specific race, is it? That means it's not institutionally
it's always
racist.
Outsiders. It's never like the policy is never drawn in order to disadvantage like the majority. They do so. They create a policy that will sort of target a group that is already disadvantaged, and they know like.
So everyone but white.
Yeah.
As long as it targets anyone, you white, you're fine. You're fine.
No, as in it's designed as such to make sure disadvantaged people are further disadvantaged, and that's.
Do you think that's by that's purposely designed
deliberate.
that way?
Stop and search, I do think. Stop and search was definitely institutional racism. And they knew exactly who they were going to stop and search once they gave police.
Yeah,
the
as much as we've just discussed this, that maybe it's the application and not the institution, I still would say there's institutional racism for the simple fact that they know this and they've not done anything about it.
That's what I was going to say. I don't think it's just the fact that there's a policy that by nature or by design targets a specific community. Sometimes it can just be the fact that a community has been affected and they haven't bothered to do anything about it. Because when you were saying about the NHS, but then why is it that black women are 5 times more likely to die during labour? There may not necessarily be a policy where they say,
but
midwife,
they're treated differently.
Exactly, midwife, go and always run over to the white woman who's giving birth or needs a C-section or an epidural or whatever, ignore the black woman. There may not be a policy that says that, but bottom line is black women are dying just by having children.
And this is the thing. This is why I want to make a difference between the two, because I think the word institutional racism, or the phrase, it allows people to shed their collective or their individual blame. Like, we don't talk enough about how individuals do things and have mindsets, subconscious bias, whatever you want to call it, that affects people on an aggregate level. If you're a doctor and you're consistently giving black women less painkillers than you are white women, then that's not a policy, and that's not the institution. That's like a whole group of people.
How do you get around that though? Because as we've said before, Asians in this country is like 7.5%. People from African and Caribbean backgrounds are like 3%. And the majority of the country is white. So how even if there is policy and legislation to say if this happens, you'll be fired or so on and so forth, because recently, even talking about the news, a police officer faces jail because he was a part of a Nazi organisation.
Yeah.
So then he could have said because people were going to come down on the police hard, why didn't you figure this out, blah, blah. But you could secretly be a Nazi and no one know. Like, I'm not going to go through my police training at the Peel Centre where I'm going to highlight, I'm a Nazi, but don't. No, I'm going to say what I need to say to get this job. Do you get what I mean? So my question again is,
those people are the problem, though.
Who's the problem? The top?
The people that don't realise they're racist. I think the people that like have subconscious biases and want to either say it's about an institution, which is sort of abstract.
See, I disagree. I disagree with that
racist.
strongly. Do you know why? The reason why I disagree with that is we need to deal with the public administration of policies and how things occur where it will affect people from day to day. So people always question me. They say you take this like right-winged approach or this conservative approach or whatever the case may be, this victimhood, stop being a victim, but then you took District Nightclub to court. The reason why I took District Nightclub to court alongside the other girls is because I was in a public place. Yes, it was a private business, but you broke the law. So that law was in place to protect me and I'm going to use it and now I'll take you to court. That's different between telling people to try and stamp out their unconscious bias. The reason why I say that's you're saying that people with unconscious bias or who don't know they're racist is the problem is because We all have unconscious bias.
Yeah, sure.
Racism within ourselves or prejudice is never going to go away. But when it affects you publicly, affects your bag, affects your career, there should be things in place that say stop. No,
There's absolutely no way you can do one without the other, though.
you can.
And the reason I say that, well, like you said, affects you in the workplace or affects your earnings. Like, there's statistics to show that a person with an African sounding name has to do 3 times the number of applications as a person with an English name in order to get the interview. And I think
The
it's
only
even
thing
worse
that will
for
heal that is
Muslims.
time. And I said this today, and people don't like, again, to be held accountable. When I grew up, I went to a heavily dominated Caribbean school, but there were Africans that went there as well. There wasn't any white individuals that went to the school, yeah? And the Caribbean people were horrific to the African children. I hate to repeat this, but just so people know, you African batty scratcher, you village boy, those things were said regularly. So if we are saying those things to our own people, that we should know what prejudice and racism feels like. If we were like that only 10 years ago, 15 years ago, then how are we going to overnight eradicate unconscious bias?
I don't imagine it's overnight, but I do.
So that's why I said time's the only thing that will change it.
I do think there needs to be like a. If we continuously talk about institutional racism without like acknowledging individuals' part in it, we'll always miss the point.
But then what about going back to this report? So this report says that what faces or what ethnic minorities have more difficulty with is more class, or people that are disadvantaged, it's likely to be class that affects them more than race. And we place heavy emphasis all the time on racism. And then the report goes on to highlight the achievements of a lot of African children and the achievements of, attainment of Caribbean children versus white working class children who fall massively behind. But then what about that in terms of, if that was the other way around, we would say that's due to racism. So what does a working class white parent say? That we are flying ahead of their children in a white country.
But here's the thing, we do well at school, but then they do better in the job market, so it doesn't really
Working
matter.
class?
Yeah.
You would say that when it comes, because we raise the point of there's not enough Black and Asian people in top jobs like CEOs, head of departments, so on and so forth. But then can't the same be said for working class white individuals, based on how they speak, based on...
Potentially. I'm not sure. It's not as like if you, again, like it's more about the number of barriers that you have to hit to get over whatever bias you're facing, whether it's racism or classism, whatever. And if your name is Peter Jones, like they don't know you are like from a disadvantaged background yet. And when you do the telephone interview or whatever, as long as you've got an accent that you can front with, you're fine. But the problem is, if your name is a certain way, the first barrier you fall at.
Yeah, I just think the Conservative government has got this massively wrong. Read the room. Like, no, seriously.
Yeah, for real.
We're all pissed off because of COVID. We're all highly strung emotionally. Anything racial to add to the conversation, and they've come out with this report. And the thing I always say is, a vast majority of us do not read. I haven't even gone through the report yet. We're all busy people. Then the media's going to pick up and they're going to regurgitate distasteful headlines, and it's going to anger us even more. And the Conservative government just looks like they're contradicting themselves, because David Cameron assigned Lammy to do this report that clearly showed institutional racism. Then he did that other report about names. If you had Nigerian names, Asian names, you're less likely to get a job. So are we saying that's all gone now? Are all those things fixed now?
Boris, innit? Boris is a charlatan, so...
Like, everyone, I don't hide it. I'm more leaning in terms of our principles and values to conservatism. But this government, with this report anyway, I just think the timing's wrong.
Awful.
I think the way that they've conducted it is wrong. Yeah, stats and figures, lovely, great, but what about people's lived experiences?
And that's, because
And
it completely diminishes that.
They've not highlighted that enough. If they would have highlighted the same and had balance, I would have been like, cool. But they've pushed along to basically say there's no such thing, and they know that
we're a model country, etc., etc. And the minute you say that,
a model country, calm down. Don't get me wrong, the UK is still the best place, apart from maybe some parts of America and Canada, for an ethnic minority to succeed financially. You can't find me another country.
I like the UK. I rate it over US. I think we're better off than the US in lots of ways.
The UK, I stick by that. This country is brilliant for us to succeed if we really want to. But a model country when it comes to racism, I don't know about that.
We're better than France, maybe Spain, Italy.
But let's move on. What else is in the news that we found interesting this month?
There was the story about the passports, not the COVID passports, the baby daddy passports. Your passport.
Is this what we're calling it?
Cancelled.
I hate the term baby daddy.
Same.
Though. Can we say
baby mother and baby daddy makes me
father
cringe.
of child passport?
It's longer. So find something. Snappy.
Father passport.
Father passport. Dad passport.
Yeah, can I just query if I read, was it specifically the men, or was it, didn't the report say parent, or did it specific?
It's got to be both.
Can we do a quick search? Because what we have a habit of doing is just honing in on what benefits the conversation. And do you know what else was the issue with this? Misogyny as a hate crime. They actually said misandry too.
Oh, it did.
But we failed to have that conversation.
Apologies, people.
Because it benefited the conversation at the time. Misogyny, why are they raining down on men? No, misandry too. Yeah, if you're a woman deemed as hating on men, or any form of language that stipulates that you're hating men, it can also be deemed as a hate crime. It's not just about men. So does it say? So what does it say? Does it say fathers and mothers who failed to? Surely. But for the sake of the conversation, I'd probably say that fathers are more found wanting. Don't quote me on this. Please do your research. When it comes to child support,
we don't even.
Because naturally, children tend to live with their mothers.
Yeah, and even the court system will favour that.
Exactly.
And,
so 100%. It's not.
It will affect. We can just go.
Yeah, in fairness, we can say it's going to affect the men more.
Let's just say absent parents.
It definitely says person's passport.
Yeah, absent parents passport. It's interesting because I do think we need to do something about parents having children and then doing absolutely nothing to look after them. Mm-hmm. The passport thing seems like a really odd one, and I really dislike it when you've got a policy over here and a behaviour and they have nothing to do with each other.
But you know why I think the passport could make sense? Because unless you can prove that you work abroad, it's probably the most thing that will affect you but not really affect you from day to day. So if they would have said something along the lines of, we're going to just go directly into your bank account. We don't know what debt that father's in as to why do you see what I mean? Or let's say,
let's then go in the bank account.
Yeah, but they do that already, but I'm saying for even more. Right. Well, it's very minuscule. They can get around that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Do they go into the bank account, or is it just a case of like an income and expenditure and you kind of submit the documents that you want?
The passport thing is, but then the only problem with that is there's many fathers that wouldn't care because they don't actually travel.
No, yeah, that's my point. So if we're taking like not legitimate, but if we're taking the broke dad that is not paying any child maintenance and also doesn't want to, he's not flying out anywhere anyway. Yeah. So where's the deterrent?
Yeah,
it's almost
and even if he is, let's just say we're taking the person who, like, let's just take the averages. So we've got the one who doesn't fly out at all, zero deterrent. Then we've got the one that flies out once a year, still next to nothing. Okay, maybe the one that flies out twice a year. It's like you said, it's enough.
And many people have dual citizenship. I've got a Belgian passport and I've got a British passport.
I've got an American.
I take my British passport. See you later.
The thing is, for me, it'd be like, oh yeah, we caught you speeding, you can't go cinema. Like, make it, take away my driving license, and then I'll start.
What do you think? Okay, what do you, because you work in policy, what is a good policy to make an absent parent pay for their child?
I think the council tax approach is a good one because, like, not
Not a lot of people pay not loads of people pay council tax. It's
No,
about
but
the household, isn't it? If you're living with someone and you're not paying council tax, then I'm talking about a policy where they cannot get around it. I know that's not a lot, but
But how easy is it to get around council tax? I don't know. I've never tried because the one time I missed my council tax payment, they fined me so much.
you can go
quick.
to prison.
Yeah, so
They're
like,
quick with that.
and it's not like, and the thing is, I think they've got so much more of an incentive. Like each council's got so much more of an incentive to go after that money quick time than they do to go after a mother or father's money that they're not paying.
Because even the process, isn't it?
So
the
I
process
think
to
they're
retrieve
invested.
the money.
Yeah, they're invested in retrieving your council tax. And your missed council tax, you get that red letter immediately. You're like, oh my god.
Do you think fathers should still pay if the mother has prevented them from seeing the child?
Yes. Because
Do you?
that payment's not anything to do.
Because
with
that payment isn't about. That payment is literally to the development or the upbringing of the child. Just because you don't have access.
What about if you had two people that were engaging in sexual activity for that purpose only, and he's explicitly said, I do not want children, I will not be a good father right now, I do not have the finances, and he all the time wants to wear a condom, and she was like, please, like, do you know what, I've got a bit of sensitivity with condoms at the moment, but I'm on the pill. Then she decides to keep the child, and he says, I don't want anything to do. Why then? And I'm not saying, I'm just asking, why then should he have to pay for a child that he explicitly said
that he doesn't want?
I do not want this child.
So
I don't have the finances.
Iceland, I think, are still trialing a male abortion, and I don't think it's a bad idea.
What is a male abortion?
Yeah,
who?
A male abortion.
What is that?
Basically, you sign something, and it's almost like you're a sperm donor now. You've given up all your rights to your child, just like a sperm donor would.
I agree with that. I agree. So what you're basically saying is, but then wouldn't you have to have that contract before you sleep with the girl to say, prior to us?
Like, it would be in the same time scale as the abortion.
Oh, so what he would do is...
So like before 24 weeks,
Yeah.
while she's pregnant,
Yeah.
he
No,
waivers
it
all
can't be like
rights.
that. What
Yeah,
would make
no, it
sense
is that, it is that.
what would make sense is if a man can go onto a website and say,
And registers.
register from this day on for the next 3 years, no matter who gets pregnant, I am not taking
think it
any
works like that,
responsibility. Doesn't that make sense though, for any child? And then you tell the girl, you say, oh, I've signed up to that
That's the
male
problem, though,
abortion thing. So if you decide to have a baby, that's on you.
Hang on. One girl I wanted to sign the thing for, but the next one I might be different. So I don't think it's...
Yeah, but that's within his choice to do that then, isn't it?
Well, no,
But, no?
You don't want to sign... Like, you don't want to sign up for... Maybe, I don't know.
I
Maybe
just
this
think
is
there's
like-
so
this
many
is-
variables. Like, imagine being in a relationship, she gets pregnant, and then she turns into, as far I'm talking about from his perspective, not that it's accurate, and then hormones and etc. And she goes crazy, and he's like, no, I can't hack this. We
Men
need to
should
break
have
up.
more rights though. If we want equality, men should have more rights as a say. We have all the say because we're we carry the child.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah. But we've come to the end now. We could talk for hours.
We could. Next time we'll go.
But
in,
that's
we'll
our
find out
views.
what happened in Iceland.
With that male abortion.
That comes to the end of our views on the news. Don't forget to subscribe, and our Instagram and Twitter is moneystation__. Thank you.